In this video, I'll show you how to make a delicious goulash with homemade bread dumplings. You'll really have to try this out. Sweet, we'll start by dicing 2 yellow onions. This recipe can feed up to 4 people. You can also double the recipe and store it in the fridge so it can be eaten across several days. Nice, once that's finished, we'll add them to a large pot. Then we'll fry the onions with some oil on medium heat until they're translucent. Then in the meantime, we're going to mince 3 garlic cloves. And also make sure to keep an eye on the stove every now and then. We'll mince them very finely and transfer them to a separate cup. Sweet, and yes, I did spill some. Then we'll wash 2 carrots. Now you can also peel them, but I like to keep the skin on. I'll cut both ends off and then quarter them lengthwise. And then I'll chop them and transfer them to a separate bowl. Just make sure you cut them into roughly equal pieces. We'll put that aside for now. Then we'll grab 500 grams or about a pound of beef chuck. Then we'll cut it into roughly equal sized dices. Then once that's finished, we're going to transfer it to the pot and brown it really nicely. Now my stove is very weak, so this is the best I could do. Just make sure it has some color. After that, add the garlic and 2 heaped spoons of paprika. We're going to be quite generous with the paprika. We'll stir that on medium heat for a bit, and then we'll add 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. Keep stirring on medium heat, and then I'll add a teaspoon of caraway seeds. Then we'll add about 2 tablespoons of flour. Then we'll give that a good mix until there are no dry spots. Sweet, that looks good to me. Then we'll go in with about 500 ml or 2 cups of liquid. You can use beef broth, but I'm using water. We'll also add 2 bay leaves, some pepper and salt to taste. You can always add more salt later on, so don't go too heavy on the salt. Stir periodically and simmer for about 1.5 hours before adding the carrots. Then have a taste and adjust for seasoning. We'll let that simmer on the background while we move on to our bread dumplings. Start with half a cup or about 120 ml of lukewarm milk. Add a tablespoon of sugar and a tablespoon of yeast. Give that a good stir and let it bloom. Nice, after that I'll crack in an egg. And make sure to thoroughly beat it in. Then I'll add 200 grams or about 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. I'll also add in about a teaspoon of salt. We'll give that a good mix with the fork and then move on to kneading with our hands. You might also have to add more flour, but see as you go. That looks about right. We'll keep kneading until it's nice and smooth. Then once that's ready, we're going to shape it into a bowl and let it proof for about an hour. Be sure to cover it with a towel and put it in a nice warm spot. Also, don't forget to keep an eye on your goulash. Once it's doubled in size, we're going to take it out and divide it into 2. We'll shape them into nice logs. An easy way to do this is to tuck it in on itself and roll it into a log. Make sure the seams are pinched and put it seam side down. An even easier method is flattening the dough and rolling it up. Then just make sure to make it longer by rolling it out. Nice, that looks good. We'll put them on the bench and cover them with a towel. We'll let those proof for about 30 minutes. Once they're puffed up nicely, we'll get a pot of hot water simmering. To the pot of water, we're going to add a lot of salt. We want it as salty as the ocean. And once it's almost at a boil, we're going to drop our bread dumplings in. Cover that with a lid and we're going to flip after 10 minutes. And please use a larger pot than me. After another 10 minutes, you can take it out and poke some holes in it. This releases the steam. As final touch to our goulash, I'm adding some marjoram. But you can also use oregano. I'm using about a tablespoon. For my topping, I'll be making some red pickled onions. Just peel and cut the onion lengthwise. Add those to a bowl along with some sugar and some salt. I'm just eyeballing here. Then pour in 50-50 rice wine vinegar and water. Just enough to cover, and then give it a good mix and set aside. Then we'll plate up, starting with some slices of our bread dumpling. Then we'll add a nice healthy serving of our goulash. Then I'll sprinkle on the red pickled onions. And I'll finish off with some cilantro leaves. Now, and if you like my content, please like, comment, and share. Also hit that subscribe button. See you next week.